February 2016, Burbank, California. Warner Brothers Boardroom. Clint Eastwood sits across from 7 studio executives who are trying very carefully not to panic. They've just watched the first rough cut of the 1517 to Paris. And it's a disaster. Not because of the directing, not because of the cinematography, but because the 3 leads can't act. At all. The head of distribution, a woman named Patricia Newhouse, speaks first. Her voice is measured, but urgent. "Mr. Eastwood, we need to reshoot. We need to recast. We have time. We can bring in professional actors. Chris Pratt is available. John Boyega expressed interest. We can fix this." Clint doesn't respond immediately. He's 85 years old. He's made over 40 films. He's won every award Hollywood has to offer, and he's sitting in this boardroom listening to people tell him his film is broken. Except it's not broken. It's exactly what he intended, and he's about to let it fail rather than compromise. To understand what happens in that boardroom, you need to understand what happened on August 21, 2015. A high-speed train traveling from Amsterdam to Paris. 554 passengers. A Moroccan man named Ayoub El-Kazani boards with an AK-47, 9 magazines of ammunition, and a plan to kill everyone on board. 3 American friends are sitting in car 12. Spencer Stone, 23 years old, U.S. Air Force. Alex Scarlatos, 22, Oregon National Guard. Anthony Sadler, 23, college student. They're backpacking through Europe, just kids on vacation, taking selfies, complaining about the Wi-Fi. They have no idea they have 90 seconds left to live normal lives. The gunman emerges from the bathroom. He fires 1 shot. The sound is deafening in the confined space. People scream, duck, pray, and these 3 American kids who should run instead charge straight at an armed terrorist. No training, no plan, just instinct. Spencer tackles the gunman first, gets slashed across the hand with a box cutter, nearly loses his thumb. Doesn't let go. Alec grabs the AK-47, starts beating the terrorist with it. Anthony jumps in, helps subdue him. A British businessman named Chris Norman joins them. The whole thing takes 90 seconds. When it's over, the gunman is unconscious. Spencer's hand is hanging by tendons. And 554 people are alive because 3 college-age kids didn't think. They just acted. The media coverage is instant, global. These boys become heroes overnight. Presidents call them. They get medals. France awards them the Legion of Honor. America celebrates them. And Hollywood starts circling. 6 months later, Clint Eastwood is reading a script adaptation of their story. It's standard stuff. Hero's journey, 3 acts, dramatic dialogue, everything Hollywood knows how to do. But Clint puts it down after 20 pages. Because something is wrong. This script makes them sound like action heroes, like they planned this, like they were brave instead of just present. Clint picks up the phone, calls his producer. "I want to meet the real guys, not their lawyers, not their agents, them." The meeting happens in Los Angeles. Spencer, Alec, and Anthony walk into Clint's office expecting a Hollywood legend. Instead, they find a quiet old man in jeans and a flannel shirt who asks them one question. "What were you thinking when you ran toward the gunman?" Spencer answers first. "I wasn't thinking. I just saw movement and reacted. It's what I was trained to do." Alec nods. "Same. It wasn't courage, it was just happening. And we were there," Anthony adds. "If we'd thought about it, we probably would have hidden like everyone else. But we didn't have time to think." Clint listens to this, really listens, and he understands something the studio doesn't. These boys aren't heroes because they're extraordinary. They're heroes because they're ordinary, because they didn't have time to be scared, because they acted before fear could stop them. That night, Clint makes a decision that everyone will tell him is insane. He's going to cast Spencer, Alec, and Anthony to play themselves, not actors playing them. Because their story isn't about performance, it's about presence. It's about 3 regular kids who found themselves in an impossible situation and did the only thing that made sense in that moment. When Clint tells the studio The reaction is immediate. You can't be serious. They're not actors. They've never been on camera. This is a $30 million film, not a documentary. You're risking everything. Clint's response is simple. Then we're risking everything. The studio tries everything to change his mind. They offer him bigger budgets for future projects. They suggest using the real guys in cameos while actors carry the film. They bring in consultants who explain that audiences need polish, need professional delivery, need the comfort of watching people who know how to perform. Clint listens to all of it, and then he says, "I'm not making a film about acting. I'm making a film about truth. And the truth is, these boys saved 554 lives. The least I can do is let them tell their own story." Production begins in March 2017. The first day is exactly as awkward as everyone feared. Spencer, Alec, and Anthony stand on a train, set that's been built to replicate Car 12, exactly. Cameras everywhere, crew watching. And they have no idea what they're doing. The first take is painful. They're wooden, stiff, reciting lines like they're reading a grocery list. The cinematographer looks at Clint with concern. The script supervisor grimaces. This isn't working. Clint calls cut, walks over to the three of them. Forget the script. Just talk to each other the way you did on the real train. What were you actually saying? What were you actually doing? Spencer thinks back. We were talking about girls, and Tinder, and how Anthony was striking out. Clint nods. Then do that. Say exactly what you said. Move exactly how you moved. They try again, this time without scripts, this time just being themselves. And something shifts. They're not acting, they're remembering, and Clint films it all, every awkward pause, every uncertain gesture, every moment where they're clearly not professional actors. The crew doesn't understand what they're watching. This isn't how films are made. Films are polished, rehearsed, perfect. But Clint keeps shooting, keeps encouraging them to just be. And slowly, over weeks, Spencer, Alec, and Anthony stop trying to perform and start just existing in front of the camera. One day they're filming the attack sequence, the moment where everything goes wrong, where Spencer charges the gunman. The stunt coordinator has choreographed everything perfectly, every punch, every movement, every beat. But when Clint calls action, Spencer doesn't follow the choreography. He just moves, the way he moved on the real train. Instinct, muscle memory, chaos. It's not clean, it's not pretty. Spencer gets his hand tangled in the prop gun exactly where his real hand got cut. He grimaces, keeps going, and his face shows something no actor could fake, the memory of actual pain, actual fear, actual confusion about whether he's going to die in the next 10 seconds. Clint doesn't call cut. He lets the camera run, lets Spencer live through it again. And when it's over, Spencer is shaking. Not acting shaking, really shaking, the kind that comes from reliving trauma. Clint walks over, puts a hand on Spencer's shoulder. You okay? Spencer nods. Doesn't trust his voice. That's it. That's what we needed. The truth. Not a performance. The truth. The film wraps 8 weeks later. The final cut is exactly what Clint intended. 90 minutes of 3 non-actors playing themselves. The first 2/3 of the film follows their lives before the attack, their childhood, their friendship, their aimless trip through Europe. It's slow, meandering, deliberately unglamorous. Then the attack happens, and for 15 minutes, the film becomes something else. Not an action sequence, a document, a recreation so faithful that it feels like watching the actual event. Warner Brothers screens the film for test audiences. The scores are brutal. People complain the leads can't act, that the pacing is off, that they're bored for the first hour. The studio looks at the numbers and sees disaster. They bring Clint back to the boardroom. Patricia Newhouse speaks. "Mr. Eastwood, we need to make changes. We can cut the first act down. We can do ADR to improve the line delivery. We can save this." Clint listens, and then he says something that shocks everyone in the room. "No." Patricia blinks. "I'm sorry? No changes. We release it as is. But the test scores indicate this film will underperform significantly. We're looking at a potential loss of $15 to $20 million. Then we lose $20 million. The room goes silent. A director doesn't say things like this. Directors fight for their films. They make compromises. They do what's necessary to protect the studio's investment. Clint stands up. This film isn't about box office. It's about honoring 3 boys who saved 554 lives. And if we change it, if we polish it, if we make it more palatable for audiences who want movie stars and perfect dialogue, then we're not honoring them. We're exploiting them. I won't do that. He walks out. The studio is left with a choice: release the film as is or shelve it entirely. They choose to release it, quietly, with minimal marketing, already expecting failure. The 1517 to Paris premieres February 9th, 2018. Critics savage it. They call it amateurish, clumsy, a waste of Clint Eastwood's talent. The performances are criticized as wooden, the pacing called glacial. Review after review says the same thing. This would have worked with real actors. Box office matches the reviews. The film makes $57 million worldwide against a $30 million budget. Not a disaster, but far from a success. Industry insiders shake their heads. Even Clint Eastwood can fail. But something else happens. Something the critics and the studio don't measure. Spencer, Alec, and Anthony get to tell their own story, in their own words, in their own way. And people who were on that train watch the film and say, that's exactly how it happened. That's exactly what they did. A woman named Ellen Jensen, who was in car 12, writes Clint a letter. In it, she says, I've watched 100 news reports about what happened. I've read a dozen articles, but your film is the only thing that got it right. Not because it's pretty, because it's true. Those boys weren't actors. They were just boys. And that's what made them heroes. 6 months after the premiere, Clint is asked about the film at a press junket for his next project. A journalist brings up the reviews, the box office, the criticism. Was it worth it? Would you do it again? Clint thinks for a moment. Then he says, every time I make a film, I have to decide what matters more, pleasing audiences or honoring the subject. Sometimes you can do both. Sometimes you can't. With this film, I couldn't. Those boys gave me their trust. They let me into the worst and best moment of their lives. I owed them truth, not entertainment. Truth, the journalist presses. But you're a storyteller. Isn't entertainment part of the job? No. Respect is the job. Entertainment is a bonus. That answer doesn't satisfy Hollywood. Hollywood measures success in numbers, in box office grosses and award nominations, and cultural impact. By those metrics, the 1517 to Paris is a failure. But by Clint's metric, it's exactly what it needed to be. A memorial, a document, a choice to prioritize humanity over profit. To let 3 non-actors stumble through their own story rather than watch polished professionals fake it. Years later, Spencer Stone is asked what it was like working with Clint Eastwood. He doesn't talk about the filmmaking process. He doesn't talk about the cameras or the crew or the premiere. He says, Clint made us feel like what we did mattered. Not in a flashy way, not in a Hollywood way, in a real way. He listened to us. He believed us. He didn't try to make us into something we weren't. And that meant more than any movie ever could. That's who Clint Eastwood is. Not the man who never fails, the man who chooses when to fail, who understands that some failures are more honorable than success, who measures his work not by how many tickets it sells, but by whether he looked someone in the eye and kept his word. In that boardroom in 2016, Clint Eastwood could have made the safe choice, could have recast with professionals, could have salvaged the box office, could have protected his reputation. But he didn't. Because 3 boys trusted him with their story, and that trust mattered more than anything Hollywood could offer. The 1517 to Paris is not Clint Eastwood's best film. It's not his most successful. It's not the one people will remember when they list his achievements, but it might be his most honest, because it's the film where he chose truth over comfort, Authenticity over polish, respect over revenue. That's his legacy. Not the films that succeeded. The films where he refused to compromise, where he said no to studio pressure, where he honored people over profit, where he let a film risk failure rather than betray the people whose story he was telling. On the set of the 1517 to Paris, Clint Eastwood directed 3 non-actors through the most traumatic moment of their lives. He didn't make them better performers. He made them feel safe enough to be themselves. And when the critics said it didn't work, when the box office confirmed their fears, Clint didn't apologize. He didn't second-guess. He just moved on to the next film. Because that's what he does. He makes the choice he believes is right, and then he lives with the consequences. No regret, no excuses, just a quiet certainty that some things matter more than success. That's Clint Eastwood, 85 years old, still making films his way, still refusing to let Hollywood tell him what truth should look like, still understanding that the greatest act of respect is letting people tell their own stories, even when those stories aren't polished, even when they don't work, even when they fail, because sometimes failure is the only honest option. And Clint Eastwood has never been afraid of honesty. That's what separates him from everyone else. That's what makes him legendary, not the success. The willingness to fail for the right reasons. The courage to look at 7 studio executives and say, no. The understanding that truth is more valuable than applause. And somewhere Spencer Stone, Alex Skarlatos, and Anthony Sadler are living normal lives, going to work, seeing friends, remembering that day on the train. And when people ask them about the movie, they don't complain about the reviews. They don't apologize for not being actors. They just say, Clint let us tell it our way. And that's all we wanted. That's enough. That's everything. That's why Clint Eastwood let the film fail. Because some stories aren't meant to succeed. They're just meant to be told. Honestly, completely, without compromise. And if the world doesn't understand that, if Hollywood can't measure that, if critics can't appreciate that, it doesn't matter. What matters is the 3 boys on that train got to tell their truth. And Clint Eastwood made sure nothing got in their way. Not budgets, not box office, not his own reputation. Nothing. Because that's what directors do, not the ones who chase success, the ones who protect truth, the ones who understand that sometimes the greatest achievement is simply keeping your word. That's Clint Eastwood, silent, stubborn, letting his work speak for itself, refusing to explain, refusing to defend, just making films the way he believes they should be made and accepting whatever comes next. Success or failure, praise or criticism, it's all the same to him. Because he's not making films for Hollywood. He's making them for the people whose stories he tells. And as long as they feel honored, he's done his job. Everything else is just noise.